every aspect of activity at UTT, it stands to reason that this will be an important seminar. As he puts it, beyond plumbing. And we all know how important plumbing is to our building. So I guess it's IT, or the Learning Center, I'm sorry, to the core of the university's enterprise. Now, I just familiarized myself with some of Uli's accomplishments, where we all have the flyer. But one of the things that I'm not sure he has mentioned here, although he has mentioned learning and course development, professional development, but one of the things that the Learning Center seeks to do is to keep tabs of how we are progressing, UTT is progressing as a teaching institution. What are the successes that we are having with our courses? How pleased are our clients, namely the students, and whether in fact the courses are having the impacts we think they're having. So this is a very important exercise, and we have to thank the Learning Center, Professor Rauch, Dr. McDonald, etc., for developing this, because without it, really, we would have no idea of whether we have accomplished or not. So that is one thing. The other thing is this drive that Uli has exhibited in trying to get us to incorporate IT and new technology in our instruction, to put everything on a modern plane so that we don't appear to be backward. So for that we have to thank him. So now, without further ado, let me leave him to tell us how he intends to make even more innovations. Okay?
Thank you for having me, and thank you for coming. I should start by saying that this is a little bit of an out-of-the-box approach to what we're going to be doing, or what we could be doing at UTT with IT. And it's actually quite helpful to think that yesterday we had a meeting with the president. It was kind of a bit of a brainstorming meeting about the future direction, the strategic kind of direction of UTT. And the president thought that it was too conservative what people came up with in terms of where UTT is supposed to go. Is too conservative. So I'm thinking this fits right into expanding the box that we are in. This is a bit of a... Okay, now let me see if anything... Oh, okay, it works. This is a bit of a coming-of-age story. And the title was, as you saw, Beyond Plumbing. How IT is to be part of the strategic planning of an institution. And it's a coming-of-age story because coming of age means you mature, you get more and more responsibilities, but you also become, as you mature, part of the decision-making process. So you move kind of from childhood into a young adulthood, and then you become an adult. My sense is IT is an adult. In 2007, this guy, Walt Mossberg, who is a tech columnist with the Wall Street Journal, said that IT in large technology departments slows the progress of mankind. Right? Very provocative. And he did say that in a meeting to university professors and administrators. Now, if there were a bigger audience, I would ask who is IT, who is not IT here, who would agree or not. But since I'm not here to, excuse me, I have a cold, since I'm not here to alienate people or how can I say, aggravate anybody, I just took that as a provocative statement. And to some extent, of course, easily and quickly, people will have said in the past, oh yeah, IT just doesn't, step up to the plate. The very fact that right now my pointer, oh, see, all of a sudden it worked. Who knows? It didn't work, you saw the people here before, now the pointer works often enough, yeah, it's IT, right? Right, okay. On the other hand, there's a widespread recognition now that IT is really part of every aspect, as Valerie has said, actually, every aspect of every transaction almost that we do at the university, on the corporate side or the academic side. In one way or another, IT is involved. Think just living without email, living without digital communication. Now, McRobbie and Wheeler here. McRobbie is the president of Indiana University. Brian Wheeler is the VP, Vice Provost for Information Technology. They have done quite a bit of work on educational IT. And of course, they are just one of many voices that are calling now to get IT much more involved out of its silo as being just infrastructure. Now, how did that come about? Historically, universities were separated in academic computing and infrastructure. That is, corporate computing. With corporate computing, or computing as an infrastructure being the first, and then eventually academic computing rising out of it. What has happened in the past now is that the infrastructure has been put in place. And I have to say here at UTT, the infrastructure has been put in place quite wonderfully by a number of people, one of them present in the room here, Dave D'Souza, by his successor also at the time, Judy Lake, and now represented by Alan. It is really quite remarkable what we have in terms of infrastructure. But we are not making enough use of our infrastructure. The problem is that our core business, of course, is research and education. And what we haven't done, and I can just give you an example of either the Oracle system that we are running or the Blackboard system, we're using percentages of the capacity of these systems only. We are not using these fairly expensive systems and fairly sophisticated systems to its full extent. And we are not using them not properly because we wouldn't know how to, but because we have not planned for their proper implementation and use. And you're all familiar with the implementation of our student information system here, Gensebar. Gensebar, where 6 years after the university has actually come into existence, we are now almost implemented. But we are not quite there, and it creates a lot of pain in the registration process. It creates a lot of pain for student services. You're all familiar with this. So these are the kind of enterprise-wide systems that often enough are run by IT. Most of them, I just picked up some names, most of them are run here at UTT as well. And just to show you, Blackboard is academic, Gensebar is administrative. We run a little instance of Moodle. Alexandria is in the library, and so on. This is what a high-performance computing center in the background looks. So, and we actually have this kind of setup. Now, this is Virginia Tech. This is what a computer lab looks like. And yeah, other than the scale, by and large, and in particular if you think about Tamana, we're looking at computer labs just like this. It's not a problem. The infrastructure is in place. This is at Emory University, kind of a learning commons. We just started something similar at Corinth. We are planning for Tamana. We are trying to implement here. The technology is not the problem anymore. This is Andrea Kania. She's not here now, but in one of the computer science labs, and she's doing something with biometrics there, I believe. This is a video conferencing that we did in the Masters of Public Health program with a participant or with a leader, with an instructor out of his house in St. Kitts. So the technology by and large works. And I've shown you some example of how we use it. But all that came about without any strategic plan. All that just comes because somebody says, hey, we have the infrastructure, let's try it. There is no systematic approach to how we can harness that information or that technology. Here I show you the top 10 issues 2008. You saw infrastructure was number 4. I hope you can read it. E-learning, the kind of stuff that I'm supporting, was number 9. In 2009, teaching and learning went up. By the way, the sample is something like 3,000 institutions, no, 1,000 institutions and 3,000 respondents from the various institutions. And these are fairly current data from August 2011. So you see, teaching learning with technology goes up, infrastructure still a concern. Then of course funding, perennial, a concern. In 2010, cyber infrastructure has dropped down in the list of priorities. Teaching and learning has gone further up, and strategic planning comes into vision. Because all of a sudden people realize that we have these capacities, but we're not doing enough. I mean, we're paying too much money for what we're getting back. And so these are the 2011 data. So you see strategic planning is still on there. Infrastructure moved a little up, but so did teaching and learning. And of course, this is my point. Teaching and learning, the realization that research, teaching and learning are really the main, should be the main beneficiaries of the infrastructure that we have, is only now being realized. And now everybody scrambles, so that the UTT, when they set up the Learning Center in 2008, and of course that was part of a trend that you see in a lot of other universities, everybody scrambles to make use of their resources. Here, I just want to show you a quote of Marshall McLuhan, the media theorist. Back in 1964, he said, and I read it, "Just before an airplane breaks the sound barrier, sound waves become visible on the wings of the plane. The sudden visibility of sound, just as sound ends, is an apt instance of that great pattern of being that reveals new and opposite forms just as the earlier forms reach their peak performance." If I apply that to our situation, then we are at a point where IT as we know it, as infrastructure provider, as only infrastructure provider, is not existing anymore. Has been incredibly powerful, and as it became incredibly powerful in terms of putting infrastructure in place so we can all surf the net, we can ideally do high performance computing with very little latency, hear concerts live on the web with very little latency, do all kinds of educational exchanges. Just as we begin to have, as we have this infrastructure, now there's a paradigm shift. We are moving away from looking at IT as just an infrastructure, and we're starting to look at IT as something that is absolutely necessary and an essential part of any academic enterprise. So, but if we look at that, then we have to say too, IT governance, as we know it, is dead. Because if we think about what IT was like, then you would have an IT organization, the head of IT. The head of IT would have great ideas, what needed to be done, but really didn't quite know how that would attach to what academics would wish for, or what the library needed. And to make matters worse, the head of IT would report out to the VP Finance, who of course is the ultimate expert in deciding what is needed for a university in terms of academic computing. So you understand, of course, that IT ended up in this silo, being pushed around by academic users and possibly wanting to serve, but at the same time not being able to actually have a voice. This is why I'm saying this is a bit of a coming of age story, because the head of IT, the CIO, usually would be the how can I say it, would be the adolescent on the table of VPs, right? Would be having a voice, but really only every once in a while if we really think that we need to pull him or her in. Now there's quite a number of universities that have started to align their IT activities with their strategic mission. And you see them here. UBC, where I came from, Penn State, UCLA, Wisconsin, Indiana University, which is a huge system. And if it works, I just want to show you quickly this site at Pepperdine University. With my split screens, now I get myself into trouble. Okay. How much trouble do I want to get myself into it here? Maybe not all that much. I should have, see, I didn't have a chance. It's one of these things. I should have practiced that before, and I didn't have time to do it. How, see, I'm in the presenter mode, huh?
Yeah, that's all right.
You know, I'm in the presenter mode.
That's okay.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So, what I want you to look at, you see here, is this little, just this little paragraph. So that all the research that in universities, and I just pulled out Pepperdine here, that they made an effort to actually reorganize IT and academic computing. And they made an effort to make sure that the role of the CIO as the kind of adolescent at the table is actually broadened, and that it becomes a proper VP and reporting out to the provost. And that is the important piece. So not reporting, being a CIO, reporting out to the VP Finance, but being an academic appointment. And the academic appointment is of course so important because that ensures that the interests of the academic side is realized. And that's of course why a university exists in the first place. Okay, Alan, I'm just moving the, let me see, I'm going over here, coming back, yes. Oh, I think just close it. Yes, okay, good. Thank you. And I didn't say a bad word about IT. Oh, funny, but now, see? click on the slide again. Let's see if it comes back. Good, yeah. Okay, so what I'm basically saying, IT is moving from simple technology management, you can see it here, to, importantly, shared leadership. And this is, of course, at one point, that was really the mission and the vision for UTT. No silos. A much more fluid and seamless interaction between the various disciplines. And all of a sudden, we realize that IT is part of all the disciplines and needs to be integrated. All right, so here's some numbers. We are at UTT, we're something in between here. We're giving doctoral degrees, but not a whole lot right now. We're just starting out. So we're a bit of a hybrid. But if you look here, these are usually the tasks of a CIO. And I hope you can read it all. It has instructional technology, web support, academic computing, and so on and so on. Often enough, you can see here, for instance, the library. Only in a few universities, 1 out of 5 roughly, does the library get involved with IT directly. This statistics shows that if you have a CIO who's a participant in the president's cabinet, and that is here, then they have, in almost 90%, 9 out of 10 cases, influence. And that's the important piece, of course, that you have influence over decision-making, over strategic decision-making. And if you're not part of the inner circle of the executive, then half the time what IT wants in order to represent its constituency, it's just not taken serious, it's disregarded. So, what I'm saying basically is the CIO is no longer in the IT box. And, I mean, you can read for yourself, I won't read anything down here, but the most important piece here is that CIOs now must know how to introduce new technology as well as which ones to use. And how do you find out what technology to use if you're disconnected and only once in a while hear from an academic that they would like to have a simulation program here or a software package there? That doesn't make for strategic planning. And I get to that in a moment, what I mean by that. If you look at the skill sets that a CIO needs, ability of the sample, I think you can see it here, 368, ability to communicate is, everybody agreed. Thinking strategically is number 2, 96%. Technical proficiency here at the bottom, on the other hand, is 31. Meaning, doesn't mean the CIO knows nothing, but clearly cannot be the expert in all the fields of technology, information technology. Here, quickly, this is from a blog, from a quite well-known blogger, Joachim. An IT leader of the old flavor implements strategic vision, and now the new flavor develops strategic vision or co-develops. The old one reports to an academic official. The new one is an academic official. The old one had a background in technology. The new one could be background in education, libraries. When the focus used to be on technology and systems, it is now on learning, and so on. And of course, this is maybe pushing it a little hard, the point, but clearly the role of the CIO or the head, the technology leader on campus has changed. And with it, of course, comes a realization that, of course, there is not only the campus, but we're going beyond campus. We need to collaborate. And in particular, if you take the Trinidad context, there's only so much money to go around. There's multiple institutions. These institutions need to be, they need not to compete with each other. They need to collaborate. They need to be complementary. That needs to be part of a larger strategic initiative. And of course, I say, from my experience, that this shouldn't be pushed by the government. This should be pushed by the institutions themselves. Now, one of the side effects of bringing IT into the fold is that it becomes much more democratic, the environment. And everybody who's in IT now knows that users become more and more demanding. And what will happen is that users will eventually, if they can't get what they want or it's too expensive, users will just go and get their own thing. How many of you are computing in the cloud? Do you know what I mean when I say in the cloud? Using a service that with your computer that is not located here at UTT. How many of you? Probably almost everybody. Because Gmail or Picasa or what, Google Docs, whatever you may do, it's out there in the cloud and you don't need IT anymore. You don't need them anymore. They set up the infrastructure, the pipe, and you say, hey, give me some wireless, and applications, I just do it myself. If you can't set up a database for me, if you can't set up a website for me, I'm going into the cloud. That, of course, is a problem. Because what users will do, and this is the cycle of innovation, users, it's the same with learning systems or any technology. Users, in order to get what they want cheaply, will put up with even a little bit less perfect service as long as it's available to them at their leisure. And as an organization is not able to provide the services, it becomes, it prices itself out of the market. And so the danger for IT is really, or could be, if it doesn't become part of the strategic planning, that it just sits there and eventually it becomes less and less relevant because people go and get their stuff where they can get it. And I'm talking about not high-performance computing, because this is something very specific. But your everyday user already doesn't have UTT email anymore. And you already don't have necessarily your own personal website associated with UTT, and so on and so on. So, in order to be relevant, IT, of course, needs to be part of the community and needs to be available, needs to be a collaborative partner. Analytics, an important piece. And I'm just about done in 5 minutes. Analytics. Now, all these enterprise-wide systems that we are running, they all have logs. And in the background, there's a lot of data. A lot of data. In Blackboard, we can tell exactly how long students have been on a particular page. And we can actually tell if a lecture is successful or not by the time students may stay on the page or may go over the page. Student information system. We can find out how students are doing over time because we have data. We can harvest the data, we can analyze. And we could possibly, by putting something like the Blackboard data, the student services data, the student information system data, or grades and so on, we can put it all together and develop something, for instance, like an early warning system. So you realize a student was really good at one point, starts slipping. Now we start intervening and say, is there anything? Student services comes in and says, is there anything I can do? Is there a problem that you have financially? Are there any other problems? And it is, of course, our aim as a university to get our students through and to minimize the dropout rates. that is to improve the graduation rates. The analytics, the data that these enterprise-wide systems can give us, they can all be part of the support system that we can give to students. But we need, it's not good enough when I just talk to Alan and say, hey Alan, I have a great idea. I've heard something, could we maybe do that? Or I say, Dave, could we do that? It has to be part of a broader strategy, possibly funded, but we have the people that can do it, we have them here. But these are the kind of things that need to be put into place to make our university a really modern and effective and efficient university. It's not all about dollars and cents only, although this is of course, saving the university money, because the investment the government does into a student that graduates as opposed to drop out is considerable. Yes, lastly, and this is coming to my concrete proposal actually, the economics of it. We can, right now we have something like the Learning Center and we have IT. And you see here, and I hope I represented it right, roughly an org chart for IT. And we have 4 tracks in IT: project management, enterprise applications. That's the applications I was talking about. That is Oracle and the student information system and all the Microsoft products that we are using system-wide. Then we have infrastructure operations. These are the networks. And then we have the help desk. Oh, sorry. Most of us will be most familiar with the help desk. That's service delivery. Alan, am I roughly on track here? No? Tell me, where am I off? I was just trying to be, and I juxtapose that to the Learning Center. And what we have in the Learning Center is professional development. Yeah, Dr. McDonald does that. Course redesign, emerging technologies. That's Dr. Cooper, who's here too. And classroom services, learning, a help desk. That's very much, that's AV, video conferencing. That's very similar to what IT is doing. And what I'm suggesting, you look here to the left, you see IT, to the right you see the Learning Center or academic computing. What I'm suggesting is that there is a coordination, a better coordination for starters. And you can see the turquoise. Is it turquoise? What's the color? What is the consensus on the color? Am I seeing this right? Teal. Okay. Teal. Okay. Teal. All right. All right. Teal. The teal is area here. These are the areas where I suggest that we could have some synergy by actually working closely together. So you still have the Learning Center on one hand, you have IT services with their respective heads, but you also have some kind of office that organizes, manages the business of, I have to say, an ever-increasing IT organization that is involved actively with the executive in the strategic planning, and that's on the planning part here, on the conceptual part, and then here on the operational part is that service delivery is co-located, so that you have basically a one-stop shop where every user that has a problem, if it comes to their laptops, if it comes to using video recordings or editing, if it is any other problem with course design, they can go to one space and they get served out of that space. We have the staff, it doesn't, I mean, of course, this is something I had spoken with Julie Lake about quite a while ago. And it doesn't require any additional staff, but it would be certainly a streamlining of our operations. It would definitely improve the service for all the many users that we have. So my suggestion is an inclusiveness for IT, so a realization that IT needs to be at the table, that the leadership in IT should be reporting out to the provost rather than to the financial head or to capital projects, for instance, and that, of course, IT that way becomes a much more powerful tool and a much more powerful support service for all things we do at this university. So, if you have any questions, that's that's what I'm thinking a modern university could look like. If there are no questions, we'll do that 40 minutes.
I suppose the first thing that comes to mind is in terms of VP of IT, I think I would, this forum, like to offer my congratulations to Mr. D'Souza on his appointment of Assistant Vice President of IT of the university, effective on this morning. So, Dave was also comment the Tamina project where he was in charge of IT there to make sure everything was going in line with our future expectations, and also security. And unfortunately, unfortunately, we've now returned to the main IT arena. So while Tamina may have lost most of it, you all have gained from his experience here. But it was very relevant that this presentation has come at this point in time.
I think it's actually funny.
And that's why you postponed it 3 times.
No. I was really surprised because Dave kept this very secret from me.
Yeah.
And so I had no idea, but I have to say I'm really relieved that it is somebody internal to UTT who is the head of IT now, because my worry is of course always that when somebody comes in from the outside, you have to push them through, unless they are, and I think the slide, somehow I got some slides mixed up there, that people who come from outside, from the private sector, it takes them a while to understand that IT runs a little different in the university, not in terms of the technology, but in terms of the culture. And the kind of role that IT plays in the university is much more exposed than what it plays, let's say, in a company where it's about accounting and business processes. In the university, of course, we have added dimensions of research. So Dave, congratulations. Yes. The previous slide? Okay.
So who are you reporting today?
No,
I'm asking.
This, right?
No, I'm asking you. Who are you reporting to? President.
That's excellent. That's excellent. I have to tell you that it's nothing personal with the VP Finance, but it is just that the VP Finance is not the ultimate authority on strategic direction. It is the president or the provost, and this is reflected in that appointment. So I think it's great that UTT is actually moving there, and it's really a coincidence, Dave. You didn't come to Badminton last night, you could have told me.
I didn't come last night.
Yes,
I didn't come last night. That was my plan.
Yes.
This just unfolded recently.
Yeah, congratulations.
I mean, truth be told, I didn't have a contract.
Yes.
Oh, I'm join the crowd. I have nothing.
Okay.
Rudy, I look forward to us working together.
Yeah. So my hope
He's
is,
my
of course,
mentor, by the way.
that we can work
He's
together.
very badminton, so.
Along the lines that, and this is not about grabbing turf, this is more about being effective, because it is really, we have started already in Corinth, and we are starting here now to put at least IT help desk and the TLC help desk in one room, And of course it will cross-pollinate, and we have to find out how we organize it. But what's going to happen is that people know exactly where to go, one place to go, and then it's being triaged out there.
Could you give an example, for example, of the services that you would get? As you say cross-pollinate, what's expected there, and what from the user point of view, what are they seeing and what's the difference? So for example, going into a pure IT as opposed to a pure learning center, what's the
I tell you, a very good example is you're supposed to deliver a laptop and a projector. You come in here, you turn it on, and you leave, because you have delivered the laptop, the projector. Laptop's working, it's connected to the projector. The window logo shows, then you go. Instructor comes, has a USB stick. Something doesn't work. Where we need to go to is a service delivery, for instance, where there is an interest in the person who sets up, and there's enough time for the person who sets up to be here, to be sure that the instructor knows what they are doing, and eventually teach them actually, so that halfway through the semester, it's not going to be a problem anymore. It's this kind of move from, and that's just on the service delivery now, it's one little example, from providing a technical infrastructure to actually bringing in the service that is needed. So, because we all know that technology fails, as you saw before, and I'm struggling with it. So, when you're teaching, you have different things in mind. You cannot be calm and start troubleshooting. Another option is, for instance, or another example is what happens in Corinth, that people come, they have these courses on Blackboard. And while they are there, they realize that they had problems with their laptop for the longest time already. So they come and they talk about their problems with something they want to do with Blackboard and how they want to get software. Sorry? Blackboard is a course management system.
Right. Okay, good.
It's an it's a course management system, a web-based course management system. And then they get their laptop looked over at the same time, because the IT person is adjacent, and you just turn it on. So, and what will happen over time is, like I say, that you really try to get people to get to this one point, and you triage out. If it becomes a network problem, of course, then it will go to somebody like Jassy here from IT, who's in charge of the networks. But often enough, 80% of the cases you can actually, that's on the operational level, you can actually solve right there. When it comes to strategy, when you look at, then the important piece is really to see where we're going to go. Is UTT going to engage in distance education? If that is a strategic decision made, then certain pieces need to be put into place, and you cannot, and I'll give you a good example. Tobago was just recently, within 5 days, all of a sudden incredible hectic. We got to go to Tobago September 5th or September 12th, whatever. Tobago's got to start up, and can be video conference, and then everybody runs and hustles, and of course it doesn't work out. There's no equipment there, it wasn't planned properly. So on one hand, and it's, again, this has nothing to do with IT. This is the strategic planning for what was going to happen in Tobago was just not done properly. And there was no input asked to us as service providers, so we do the best as we can, but we cannot deliver good service.
Two more questions, because I don't want to flood the town, I don't want to hog the flow. You said cross-pollination of all the things you said there, it's IT moving into academic area. What's the academic moving now into IT? Because
yes. See, I think what will happen too is that, of course, your service on an operational level again, but the person who comes in here not only knows how to bring up PowerPoint, but eventually will be capable of saying, have you ever thought about, instead of doing PowerPoint, and just, you could add some video clips, for instance. And by the way, go to open educational resources, or go to YouTube or whatever, and maybe I can help you quickly. What I'm saying is it's a slow process where you move from, at least on the service level, you become more of a universal service provider. And it's not a siloed anymore, you're not just technical. So the academic needs move over as well into the service provision and become much more salient for people. From what I understand, in IT organizations, often enough, there was very little understanding why people, if you don't teach, you don't understand why it is that everything really needs to work in a particular way, because otherwise you're completely thrown off your agenda. And so once IT understands, because they participate, they realize that there is a certain standard. And so an understanding of the academic side, as well as instructors not being held by the hand all the time. Eventually an instructor needs to be able to go and pick up a projector and actually plug it in. There cannot be one-on-one service all the time, because people will have to learn. And people will have to be comfortable and familiar with information technology. It's part of their everyday life.
Which leads into my very last point before I go.
I'm glad you asked the questions.
No, because, you know, at Terminal, which I'm putting in place, there are a lot of new technologies, a lot of screens, you know, the whole thing that goes with it. There is the thought that before any academic walks into any classroom to give any course, that they first be trained, you know, in using the technology. Is it that you're saying that it's more than just learning how to turn on the projector, learning how to solve your pointer problem? Is it more than that, or are you saying that it's using the technology but now embedding it into your course, that when you're making your presentation or your stuff, it's built in almost to it? Is that what you're saying?
And of course, I mean, I know where you're throwing me a bone here. It's quite obvious that we are trying. We've been trying for the longest time, so does the library, to have what we call digital literacy, and basically savvy, new media savvy, to implement it, to bring that into the course. In fact, when we validate, sorry? Clickers? Yeah, clickers, that's just a technology. I'll explain in a moment. But what we've been trying to do is to bring it actually in the validation documents already, that is in the curriculum design. We are pushing for certain presentations, for certain pedagogies that are supported by technology. We're pushing for those to be present. And this is, of course, sorry, Martha, you wanted to say something?
I was just going to add, for instance, there's a lot of social media that, you know, that's out there, like simple like Google Docs as an example. You have online project management tools as well. You have tools that students can use to work collaboratively. So if you're an academic person and you have assignments, you know, when you're designing your course, you need to see if you want like a team assignment, then the technology exists for you to do that. I mean, I don't want to say software, but the social media tools that exist for you to use, but you might not know how to use it because you are an academic person. So you need to have that knowledge so that you can then embed it into the course, so that the students will then go on to some external project management tool or Google Docs or something like that, and work collaboratively. And so that, I think, that is what more or less what English is trying to say. So it's just not enough for a lecturer to go into a room and have computer, because that's the end, that's just enabling. But what goes behind it is something, it's going to be a steep learning curve for some of our academic people.
I don't think it's steep, but it will be a learning curve, especially what we put in time. I think it will be all the technology out there.
You can't.
And then too, sometimes you know, and then sometimes it's like
some level of
a lot of things you can do a lot. Like you can design a course, you can put a YouTube video in it, you can do this. It's a whole set of things you want to put together at the same time and use. So, and as Julie said, when you're in front of the students, it's not the time to be fiddling with it. It has to look very seamless because you're also going to be working with people who are on the cutting edge, the students. They know it more and it's intuitive to them. I mean, we are digital, what they call it, immigrants, but they are digital natives, so that you have to kind of rise to that.
But is that the function TLC was before? In terms of bringing the academic people up to that, that level of technical sophistication that they can go to a class and they will know, well, I can pull YouTube into this, like, oh, you have a little challenge here just now. Would that be something that TLC will be working on? You know, to teach academics. And I know it's 4 o'clock, so I'll shut up. I'm one question, not the class.
Well, there was just another issue that I wanted to raise, and talking about bringing IT and TLC together, but also the architecture of a classroom. So it's not just that an instructor says, this is what you're being given, make the most out of it. So that the room is designed in a way that multiple teaching styles can be used there. So it's not just that everyone has to face forward in a classroom. So there needs to be a collaboration with the design of the class and the people who are actually using.
I don't know, I'm going to make a comment.
Sure.
Don't know what I think that's there, that's built into what Tamina is going to be. I think the big question by me was the use of the technology, because what's expected is that people presenting the lectures, they don't just say, oh, I've got a better projector, a bigger screen, or I can click my way through this. That's not what this is about at all. It's truly, as Marta is saying here, a fundamental shift in how the things are going to be presented and how you're going to change your course to get the maximum learning experience out of it.
But see, that's of course what the Learning Center does. Okay. I mean, obviously you've never been in any of our workshops, neither have you, Dave, because otherwise you would know that this is exactly what we are doing. Excellent. We're having all kinds of, workshops on, let's say, digital storytelling, video conferencing. How do I present?
Where I'd like to see that in one of your lectures. Which one? Where has it been implemented? In any of the courses right now, the students?
See, what happens there is there's 650 or 700 or maybe 800 Blackboard courses. And some of these courses are just shells. Others are fairly sophisticated, where you find a lot of the kind of, pedagogical approaches on how to use technology. They are all implemented. We are pushing now for what's called hybrid courses, but again, we've got to find that needs to be part of a strategic planning process where the university makes a conscious decision to say, we want 2 times a week our students to meet online and once a week face-to-face.
Yeah.
And these decisions have to come from the provost's office, together with the programs. Then we can move and implement. So we do a whole lot, or we could be doing a whole lot, but again, the direction is missing. Lastly, of course, other universities have 4-credit courses that deal with social media, digital literacy. Really, it's a beginning course usually, and people can challenge them by doing certain tests and exams. And other than that, most people are quite happy to sit in there and get themselves acquainted with the various technologies that are available and get a basic understanding what it is that you're dealing with when we're talking, take a YouTube video, download it, what can you do with it, a little bit of media theory involved in it, and so on. I mean, I made a proposal like that to Professor Julian a long time ago. We will get there. We will get there eventually. But a first step is a recognition that this is part and parcel of teaching, learning, and research now. Anybody other than Carlos have any questions?
think part of what we're hoping the university decides to do, given its commitments to becoming more innovative, would be demonstrated in the incorporation of these technologies into how we learn, not just how we teach, but how we learn, how we do research, how we build learning communities. So I think the university is possibly moving in that direction with its renewed emphasis on being not just an entrepreneurial university, but an innovative university as well. I would expect over the next several months to see more of that kind of thing being demonstrated in some of the programs being implemented, etc. At least by a new acting president. Let's see.
No, I was just going to comment because, well, now I'm doing my master's, and one of the things that we have to do is almost like you're being forced or blackmailed into using technology, because our lecturer told us that 5% of our final mark is you have to go online every week, submit some small entry or whatever. So I never really like computers. I like books. I like to feel pages. But now I've been forced to do it every week, and now it's so natural. As soon as I go online, no, it's not hard at all. And a lot of the information now they pretty much you have to go online because it's an easy 5%. In another course might be a 10%. So, it's a nice way that they raise students. It's really...
But then you can use the same technology to create it.
Sorry?
You can use the same
technology. Yeah, that's true. I just don't like to.
You definitely can iPhone and you
It's all these things now, because now a lot of the books now are like putting up some electronic books on that. All these things, they're just really creating ways for the students and lecturers. The lecturers have to be willing to facilitate it. The lecturers have to be willing to actually create that need. Because if it can happen with me, it can happen with anybody, because I'm very backward.
Well, I can show you how simple it is. You just go with one touch and you get into your box. And you go to the library and you click on whatever book it is.
No, I do it now.
And then you just do it.
I have a Kindle because thank you to the university.
And I do think that's important because as you may not work forever for UTT, you go out into the private sector and you are literate. You are actually comfortable, and I think this is, of course, part of the benefit of having these kind of advanced or emerging technologies part of the curriculum. And that's where UTT is different from other universities. Definitely from other universities in the region. Carlos, are you
the thing about it is what I'm seeing, I'm coming off from Victoria's comment, was that when we design the thing, that I would hope when we move into tablet, it was almost using words like, and because this is still the experience, like blackmail and being forced or coerced into it. Yeah, it's, I am thinking it's almost, as you're saying, the technology that falls away so that the use of it is there, so integrated, as Marta is saying, that it sounds like almost, and that's the, we have to get quickly there,
Because they're being blackmailed and they're doing quickly.
That's a very harsh word. I mean, it doesn't go ahead to here to sometimes, as a victim, sometimes as a victim, because you actually want to remain in the comfort zone. But if you have to do it, you have to do it. And then eventually you realize, how did I ever do without it?
Yeah.
I don't know why I used to buy books. I can do so much cheaper and convenient. So,
well, I think we are almost over time. So
okay.
Thank you very much for your patience.
Thanks a lot.
And yes.
Okay, so on behalf of Professor Rauch, we'd like to thank everybody for coming. I'd like to thank Professor Rauch for his informative lecture, and we hope that in the years to come we can see more of this being implemented at the University of Cleveland.